Hi guys, Happy New Year! 明けましておめでとうございます. Yeah, okay, I know, I'm a bit late with the New Year's greeting. It is February, but it's not just that I have been lazy. You can tell I'm not dressed to be gardening today, and that's because there's not much going on in the garden. And that's weird here. I am in zone 9B. By this time last year, I had things in the ground. I had my stock in, I had my snapdragon in. Things were getting ready for spring because spring happens here so early. And this year, it's just not. It's just not. Let me show you. For anyone that doesn't know, my name's Peggy and I'm growing a cut flower garden here on my allotment in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan, which is just south of Tokyo in USDA Zone 9B. Thanks for checking out my channel. This here is where my snapdragon is meant to be. It's not here. And behind me there is where I was planning on putting my stock and my dahlia in, and it's just a bare patch as well. And when I look back on videos from last year, it is a completely different story. Let me show you. Okay, so let me show you. Last year, these photos were taken on January 14th, and you can see how big my stock is. Absolutely massive. And then the following week, here is some video of me planting it out in the garden with a low tunnel. And on the same day as I did that, I put out my snapdragon. That was January 14th, January 20th-ish, that I got that stuff out. This is this year's stuff. This stuff is still tiny. This is my stalk, which has put on a little bit of height. But this is my snapdragon. I mean, it looks like it's only just germinated. There really is very little going on at all. Now, one of the benefits of these I grow them in these little trays is that they are clear, so I can see that they do have roots on them. They have good roots, they've got pretty healthy looking roots. They're just not doing anything on top. They haven't put on their true leaves yet. They're just not looking very genki at all. Now, the reason that I have an allotment is because my garden here is so bad. You can see this is almost in full shade. And so I don't know if it's just that they're not getting enough sunlight. I am about to move this up round the corner and hopefully it'll give it a little bit more sunshine and see if that helps. But I'm so much further behind than I was last year. Now, there might be a couple of reasons for this. First, I didn't start these seeds as early. Last year I started my seeds in October. This year I didn't start until almost the end of November, and that's because it was so hot here. I mean, it was up into the kind of late 30s, right the way up until the end of October, and it was still warm in November, and I thought that these would just dry out so quickly and not germinate and not do well. So I held off on planting them, and maybe that's why they're not doing as well, is that they've not had as long. But honestly, it's not just these guys. So yeah, I did start my seeds later this year. October was really hot, November was still hot. I held off and I didn't really start planting stuff out until the end of November, and that might be the reason. But it's not just my stock and my snapdragon that are really far behind. Last year I cut my first daffodil. My first narcissus came up around January 19th as well. This is my daffodil. This is where I'm at this year. And I have one or two here that are slightly further ahead, but they are nowhere near flowering at all. Some stuff is coming up. I've got some bits of my bluebell coming up. I've got some of my hyacinth coming up here, but just nowhere near where it should be. And even my muscari, which is one of the first ones to come up for me, I've got nothing at all. This should be muscari. This is my hyacinth. This is some bluebell. And then down here is my daffodil. Now, I've not done nothing. As you can see, I have put up a low tunnel, and that is over my pansies, my ranunculus, my anemone, and my freesia. And the plan was that last year, those all got a real big hit in February last year when things got really cold. They'd come up really nicely, and then the weather plummeted. The temperatures just got so cold in February, and these guys all died off. And I thought that if I put a low tunnel over them, I've got, first I just did the plastic low tunnel, and then I put a frost cloth over the top, and I was hoping that that would help. And I've kind of had mixed results with that. I'll go show you. So these are the pansy and viola that I planted, and I really thought these would be further ahead. I'm also not sure how much of these are actually pansy and viola and how much are weed. It's really hard to tell, so I'm just letting them do what they need to do. But further on from that, you can see these are my anemone, and just in the last week I've started to notice that a few of these are putting on some flower heads. Now, if you guys watch my videos about my anemones from last year, you'll know that for a really long time I had really short anemone. I literally had just flowers opening on top of the soil, and I thought, oh my god, I'm never going to get usable stems. And I did finally. I was just cutting and cutting and cutting them, and eventually I did get really nice long stems on them. But for this to be the first one, it's already on about a 10 centimetre stem, so I'm taking that as a win, and I'm thinking that maybe the shade cloth is causing them to come up and rise up a bit more, get taller, stretch for the sun, and maybe that's why that one's a little bit taller. So that's some good news, at least. Behind that I have my ranunculus. Now last year my ranunculus were looking really good, and then they all died down in the February cold snap, and then they came back, but they never really came back as strong as I wanted them to come back. But this year they're looking to be okay, and they seem to be liking being under the tunnel, which is great news. So these guys are all looking lush and green and are starting to leaf out a bit more. So hopefully I'll be getting some ranunculus soon as well. But the main reason I put up this tunnel was to try and protect my freesia. Now last year my freesia all came up and they were looking absolutely beautiful, and then they just completely got killed off by the cold. And I thought if I put this up early enough, maybe that would help them. And it's not. They were looking still kind of green last week, but this week they just seem to have shriveled up completely again. I really am so upset about this, and I'm hoping that they're going to bound back. I'll show you why. Oh, they're all looking so sad in there. Okay, so here they are, and you can see, especially the ones on the closest to the outside, are just brown and crispy from frost damage. But there are still some green bits in the middle, and the middle ones aren't looking completely gone. So I'm hoping this is going to be the last week of really cold wind. This is the one random anemone that's in here, and it's the biggest of them all. It's loving it. Yeah, I'm hoping that these might actually rebound for me if the cold weather just stops pretty soon. Now, as well as the autumn being weirdly hot this year, we've also had a much colder winter. It's the first time that I have seen solid frost on the ground here, and you can see that the ground has been freezing overnight. When you come down to the garden, you can see the difference in the soil, where it's kind of frozen and then thawed and then frozen. It has been a lot colder. For the first time ever, we scraped ice off the front of our car. I've never had to do that here. We used to live in Sapporo, you know, it was like 3 foot of snow. But here, where I am in zone 9B, that's never been the case. So it has been a lot colder this year. The nighttime temperatures have been lower than Scotland, which is unheard of. So they have been a lot colder this year. So maybe the tunnel has helped a little bit, but I'm still worried that I'm not going to get any freesia. And that'll be heartbreaking. Yeah. My sweet pea too were looking really good up until last week, and they just haven't liked this last week of cold. That's been the final straw for them. So I mean, they're not completely dead. They are still quite bushy, but there's no height on them at all. But again, I'm hoping that these guys might bounce back. My crimson clover behind them are looking great. But yeah, another year of not early sweet pea. But brr, it's cold. And my poppy are down here. I loved my poppy last year. I was so excited to have them back in the garden this year. I was really looking forward to them. They were one of my favourites. I did a poppy experiment where I tested the vase life on them and figured out how to make them last long enough to make them a viable crop for growing. And but they were so much bushier than this, and I know that poppy seeds need a cold snap to really get them to germinate and come on, but I'm worried that these aren't going to do anything. And the only reason I think these aren't all just weeds is because they're growing in perfect lines. If it wasn't for the fact that they were growing in lines, I would have pulled all these out as weeds already. So I'm hoping that they're going to get a lot of growth on them in the next few weeks, or I will cry. Yes, I will. It's not all bad though. This is my nigella and my cornflower nigella. And these guys are big and bushy and ready to go, so hopefully I'll have some early spring flowers. The only problem is these are both fillers. Yeah, so I don't currently have any focal at all. At the other end of the garden up there, you can see my Sweet William. So this is Sweet William that I planted as seed last year in my old allotment, and then I transplanted it to here. And it is doing okay. I'm not seeing any buds or anything on it yet, but it's definitely still brown. The ones at the back are looking a bit sad, but I'm hoping that they'll come back. But again, hopefully this will give me some form of spring flower. Now Sweet William is more of a clumping flower. It does kind of grow in a dome with lots of little flowers, so I might be able to use that as a focal with the cornflower, and the nigella as more like a wispy element if they come up at the same time. But I mean, that's still kind of, it's going to be hard work to make that work. Also, I can't for the life of me remember what colour I put in of these. yeah. My Achillea seems to be in a completely different garden though. It's loving it. It's come up early and it's already got flower buds coming. I don't know where this thinks it is. I don't know if this is just the one super sunny spot. I mean, it does look quite sunny here. So it's been getting warmer than everything else in the garden, but it's ready to go. And again, this is stuff that I transplanted from the old allotment. And while I've got these 3 really healthy looking ones, if you dig around in the soil, you can actually see some little new shoots coming out as well. So hopefully I will have lots of Achillea to use as filler flower. Here's one. Here's one. Got more over here. But really, that's it, and there's not much I can do. Now, I guess the good thing is that this garden seems to have so few weeds. It's so easy to keep so far. Compared to the last garden, the last allotment that I had, there's hardly any weed pressure here at all. So there's really not much for me to do. I just keep coming down and keeping it watered and just hoping that things go well. I'm going to move my seed pod, like I said, to a slightly sunnier spot and see if that gets things in faster. In the next couple of weeks, I'm hoping that this cold weather is going to calm down and I will be able to get my stock in here, because I think that just maybe a little bit more sunlight and more daylight hours will cause it to stretch. However, stock is a bit funny in that if it gets the right amount of daylight hours, it will go to flower even if it's not on a tall stem. So I'm kind of, I don't know what to do about that. I have also ordered some more snapdragon seeds and I am going to be reseeding just my ripple ones of those. I really liked my ripple snapdragon and I want to have them in the garden. You can seed snapdragon in the spring, kind of April to May time, March to April time. And it will come up, but it usually comes up then around July and August, and for me July and August is really, really hot, so I found that it's much better for me to treat snapdragon as a spring flower and say that it's going to die kind of around mid-June when it gets too hot for it here. So I will reseed that and hope that maybe it'll give me at least one flush, and then I might cut it back and see if I can make it come back to me again in the autumn time when the weather is cooled down again. But it's just a case of, can I keep it alive in the 40-degree heat that we get during the summer here? Don't know. But yeah, just wait and see. I'm going to put a jacket on because it's absolutely freezing, but I wore my long jacket and I didn't want to get it dirty. So let me know how your gardens are going, guys. January and February is so hard for gardeners. We're all itching to get into the garden, and spring just doesn't seem to be coming. Winter drags on. You've kind of gone through the Christmas period, you've gone through the kind of slow, nice and easy getting into the new year of January, and then February just hits and won't go away and it won't get warmer and there's nothing we can do, and you're just staring at your seedlings like a crazy person, checking them every 10 minutes to see if they've germinated yet. So I'm really looking forward to be able to get stuff out of the pod and into the ground. Also, because my spring comes so fast and so early here, I really need to start sowing my new seeds at the end of February, so I need that stuff out of the pod to make room for the new stuff to go in, to try and get it started before, so it's nice and strong before the heat of the summer and rainy season kick in here. Yeah. I hope you guys have all had a good start to the year and that your gardens are behaving. If you are in Scotland, I hope your gardens didn't get too battered by the January storms that were there. My sister was sending me pictures of roofs flying off and chimneys coming down, so I hope that your gardens and your greenhouses survived the storms. And I'd like to say that I'll see you next week, but if nothing much is happening, nothing much is happening. So I'll see you when these seeds start to grow and I can get stuff in the ground. Bye.